The next thing we're going to work on are the toms. Now in general, I like to leave toms on, even when they're not being played. Just leave them up, so as they resonate when the kit's being hit, you kind of hear those sounds, and it adds some extra flavor to the drum sound, or the kit sound. So if that happens to be a good sound that we want to keep, I like to leave it in there, and then raise the tracks when the toms are actually being hit. Now if for some reason the toms don't sound good, then I would go through the whole track, and turn it on when the toms are being hit, and turn it off when the toms are not being hit. But in general, I like to leave them on. So let's play around with the tom tracks and see how they sound, even when they're not being hit. So we have these two tracks up, so let's hear that. So this is a good example of when the resonance coming through those toms, while they're not being hit, actually adds to the drum sound. So we're going to leave the tom tracks on, even when they're not being played. And then we could automate them when they are being hit for the perfect volume for that particular part. So let's start getting a tom sound. We'll start with the rack tom, and we'll go here where the rack tom plays, and we'll just loop it. We'll start off by adding some compression. Use the Massey. We'll use a slow attack and a slow release because we want the compression to be soft, not to grab too much, just to even out the hits. Without and with. Next we'll add some EQ. Now when I'm dealing with toms, I like to cut with a parametric EQ somewhere in the lower mid-range to make the tom sound bigger. By cutting that lower mid-range, it basically boosts the low end and the mid-range to make the tom sound bigger or deeper. So we'll start off with this one here, and we'll bring it down and find the frequency that makes the tom sound deeper. Right about there does it. Without, it's a little boxy. And with, it's a little bit deeper. Now let's add some upper mids with a boost, but I don't want to use the shelving EQ, because that'll bring out the cymbals too much. It makes it sound too bright. So instead, we'll use a parametric on the upper mids. Now this is a little too peaky sounding because the bandwidth is too thin, so I'm going to make it a little wider. About here, and now we'll find the frequency. Without, and with. Bypass the whole EQ, and back in. That sounds much better. Now let's add some reverb. We can just copy it from here. That sounds pretty good. Next we'll work on the floor tom. Now in the second verse, there's a section here where the drummer rides on the floor tom. Let's hear what that sounds like. So that's a good section to work on because it features the floor tom. So again, we'll add a little compression, a slow attack and release, without, and with. Next we'll add an EQ, and just like with the rack tom, we'll start off by filtering out the lower mid-range to make it sound deeper. Bypass. Sounds a little boxy. Definitely better. We'll boost the top end with the parametric as well. Again, that sounds too peaky, so we'll widen the bandwidth. Without, and with. Definitely better. We'll add some reverb to this as well. And now, let's hear the section over here that both toms are playing in. That sounds pretty good. Let's hear it with the rest of the drums. In bypass. And back on. Now let's find a level for the toms that sounds good throughout the rest of the song. We can always bring them up using automation for these sections, but we want to find a level that's going to sound good through the rest of the song, even when the toms are not being hit. Right about there feels good. And we can always bring them up during the drum fills. So that's the toms for now. We'll automate them later. Let's hear that second verse with the vocals.
I'd heard about the things that you done before, but I thought I could change all your ways. I guess deep down I knew what you had in store. I'm done running around in your maze. No, I can't live.
That sounds good. So let's move on.